The first thing you notice about Adaju isn't his silence. It's his eyes. 7 years old, thin as a broomstick, with eyes too wide and too tired for his age. They looked like they were always waiting for someone to speak his name with love, to reach for his hand, to notice he was still there. But no one did. He sat on the cold cement floor of the backyard store, hugging a rusted metal plate to his chest like it could keep him warm. Around him, broken buckets, torn mosquito nets, a pile of shoes that had outlived 3 different feet. Above him, nothing but a cobweb-covered ceiling and the soft sound of rats crawling behind wooden beams. His lips trembled. "Mommy, please," he whispered. "I'm hungry." The words fell like pebbles into a dark well. No reply. Just the wind scraping against the iron window slats. It had been 2 days since he last ate anything, and even that had been a few spoonfuls of pap he had begged for at school. His ribs pressed against the inside of his skin like they were trying to escape. His stomach growled, not in anger, but in agony. 3 months ago, his world had still been full of light. His mother's soft hands, her humming as she cooked, the way she laughed when he told her nonsense stories about lions with umbrellas. She had been everything. And then, gone. The funeral was quick, the house quiet. His father, Mr. Enamaku, remarried within 6 weeks. The new wife, Madame Kofo, arrived with 2 children in tow. Zeno, a boy just a little older than Adaju, and Fola, his younger sister. On the very first day, Adaju had greeted her with a shy smile and said, "Good morning, Ma." She had responded with a long hiss and walked past him like he was a cockroach. He never tried again. From that moment on, the house no longer belonged to him. Madame Kofo ruled the space like a queen with a cracked crown and a temper that burned fast. Every morning she served Zeno and Fola plates piled high with jollof rice, fried plantain, eggs, and sweet tea. And every morning Adaju was handed nothing, not even a cup of water. When he asked for food, she beat him with a broomstick. Sometimes she called him Ghost Child. Sometimes she didn't even use words, just looked at him like he had ruined her life by existing. And his father? Silent. Always silent. Always staring at his phone, watching TV, or pretending to be busy with work. Once, when Adaju showed him the bruises on his back from the beatings, he looked up for a second, sighed, and said, "Just don't provoke her. Stay out of the way." That was the moment something cracked inside Adaju. He wasn't just motherless. He was fatherless, too. Each day after school, while the other kids ran home to warm meals and waiting arms, he walked slowly, dragging his feet as if returning to a punishment chamber. Inside the house, Zeno and Fola played loudly in the parlor, watching cartoons, throwing pillows at each other, laughing like life owed them nothing but joy. When Adaju peeked in, Zeno snarled, "You smell!" Fola screamed, "Go back to your rat room!" And if he didn't leave fast enough, they'd throw something at him. Once, even a remote control that cracked against the side of his head. They never got in trouble. Madame Kofo always smiled at their stories and rewarded their cruelty with candy. By night, Adaju curled up in the storeroom. His only light came from the cracks in the wooden door. His only friend was the framed picture of his mother, hidden inside an old biscuit tin. Her face was still there, soft, smiling, kind, the only face that had ever looked at him with love. "Mommy," he murmured into the dark, tears soaking his torn shirt. "They hate me. Everyone hates me. Please come back." One night after, being kicked, cursed, and ignored yet again, he placed the tin on the ground, opened it slowly, and pulled out the photo. Her eyes met his. It was an old photograph, creased in the corners, stained with time. She wore a blue dress and smiled like nothing in the world could go wrong. "I'm so hungry," he whispered to the picture, gripping it with small, shaking fingers. "I feel like I'll die, Mommy. Just help me, please. Just something to eat. Just something." A tear rolled off his cheek, landed on the edge of the plate. His lips were chapped. His bones ached. His body was crying from the inside. Silence. But the silence was different this time. It hummed. A soft, almost electric charge passed through the air. He didn't notice it at first. He was too deep in sorrow. But as his sobs quieted, and he sat, there in the dust, something shifted. His plate, the old dented one he had clutched since morning, suddenly felt warm. He blinked, looked down. Steam. Steam. He stared, his breath caught. The plate, his plate, was full, piled high with white rice, tender and fresh, steam rising in curls. On top, 2 pieces of meat, dark and rich with sauce. Adaju didn't breathe. He didn't move. He thought maybe the hunger had finally made him hallucinate. But the smell was real, savory, warm, home. His heart thundered in his chest. He scrambled backward, dropping the plate. It clattered to the floor, food still, intact. His eyes flicked to the photo, his mother's smile. Was it the same? It looked brighter, wider. He wiped his nose. "Mommy?" he whispered. The rice sat there, unmoving but undeniably real. Trembling, he crawled forward, eyes still locked on the photo, and picked the plate back up. The warmth reached his fingers, traveled to his heart. "Thank you, Mommy," he breathed, and then he ate, first, slowly, then faster. Then like he was fighting death with every bite. The room disappeared. The pain faded. The hunger receded like a tide. When the plate was empty, he stared at it, disbelieving. His stomach, once hollow and aching, now stretched with fullness. He leaned back, closed his eyes. For the first time in months, he slept, a deep, warm, peaceful sleep. But peace does not last long in Adaju's world. When Adaju woke the next morning, it took him several seconds to remember what had happened. He blinked up at the cracked ceiling of the storeroom, then looked to the corner where the empty plate still lay beside him, its surface licked clean. He sat up slowly. His stomach, once a knot of pain, was full, heavy, but in a way that made him feel safe, not sick. For the first time in what felt like forever, he didn't feel like crying the moment he opened his eyes. He looked over at the biscuit tin. The photo was still there, still smiling. Adaju reached for it with both hands and cradled it gently. "Thank you, Mommy," he whispered. "I don't know how, but thank you." The moment had felt like a dream, but the fullness in his belly had been real. The rice, the meat, the warmth in his hands. It was no dream. Still barefoot, he pushed open the door of the storeroom and crept out into the courtyard. The morning sun spilled across the ground like spilled honey. Chickens scratched at the dirt near the kitchen steps. Inside, he could hear the clang of pots and Madame Kofo shouting something to Zeno. He didn't dare go in. He rinsed his face from a bowl of leftover rainwater, then went to sit quietly by the mango tree. The smell of fried plantain drifted out from the kitchen window. His stomach, though full from last night, gave a hopeful little rumble. Maybe, just maybe today she would remember he was human too. Maybe today there would be a plate for him too. But when Zeno and Fola burst out of the kitchen carrying theirs, hot rice, boiled eggs, stew, juice in plastic cups, he didn't even bother to look hopeful. They sat on the veranda, giggling and kicking their feet. Zeno spotted him and narrowed his eyes. "You're just sitting there like a dog," he muttered. "I bet he's hoping for scraps," said Fola with a laugh. Adaju looked. Away, minutes passed. The scent of their food lingered, sweet and cruel. Then they were gone, skipping inside, plates half eaten. No one called his name. No one asked if he'd eaten. No one ever did. He returned to the storeroom, head low, mouth dry. The taste of last night was fading. Hunger crept back in like a thief. And then he saw it. On the floor, just beneath the portrait of his mother, another plate. It hadn't been there a minute ago. He stared. The same chipped plastic plate, the same warmth steaming from freshly made jollof rice. Orange red and rich with oil, topped with a piece of fried meat and a boiled egg split in half. His knees gave out. He dropped to the floor. He didn't speak, didn't breathe. He only stared at it, then slowly looked up at the photograph. Her eyes, her smile, her presence. Tears welled up. He crawled forward, reached for the plate with reverent hands. His voice broke. "Mommy!" And then, once again, he ate, slowly at first, then with growing urgency. Each bite filled something deeper than his stomach. He didn't hear the door creak open. He didn't see the shadow looming, but he felt it. Too late. "What is this?" Madame Kofo's voice crashed through the silence like a whip. Adaju froze mid-bite. The spoon dropped from his hand. The plate nearly spilled. She stood in the doorway, eyes wide, face twisted in rage. "I asked you a question, boy," she roared. Adaju scrambled back, wiping his mouth with the back of his arm. I didn't steal it, Ma. I swear, I didn't." She advanced on him, her footsteps like thunder. "Then where did you get it? Where did you steal this? Food from?" "I didn't steal," he cried. "I woke up and it was just here." "Lies!" she spat. "You think I'm stupid?" She snatched the plate and threw it across the room. It shattered, the food spilling onto the dusty floor. "You stupid lying boy!" she screamed. Her hand reached behind the door, pulling out her favorite weapon, a long, flexible broomstick bound with red string at the end. "No, please," Adaju begged, backing against the wall. "Please, Ma, I swear." The first blow landed on his shoulder, the second across his back, then his legs. He screamed. She didn't stop. "You want to use tricks, eh?" she snarled between blows. "Spiritual food? Witchcraft? You think you can disgrace me with this madness, you thief? You cursed thing!" Each word landed with a strike. Adaju fell to his knees, arms covering his head, sobbing uncontrollably. From the hallway, Zeno and Fola watched and laughed. And in the parlor, his father sat, silent, staring blankly at his phone. Adaju's cries faded into choked gasps. When the stick finally stopped, she stood over him, panting. "Next time I'll burn your hands," she hissed. She turned and slammed the door. He stayed crumpled on the floor, tears mixing with dust, shoulders shaking. Eventually, he crawled back to the tin and pulled out the photograph. His voice was gone. Only a whisper came out. "Mommy, why did you leave me here?" The picture smiled back, but he couldn't smile. He could barely breathe. As night fell and the others laughed at sitcoms in the living room, Adaju lay on his side, eyes swollen shut, lip cut, back on fire. And then, something changed. The air shifted. The room grew colder. A breeze, but the window was shut. The shadows deepened, and in the corner of the room, next to the wall where the portrait hung, she appeared. She wore the same blue dress from the photo. Her feet did not touch the ground. Her eyes were bright with sadness and fire. Her hands trembled at her sides. She looked at her son, beaten, sleeping, whimpering in dreams. And her ghostly chest rose and fell with silent sobs. She knelt beside him. She reached out, but her hand passed through his cheek like wind. She closed. Her eyes. "I'm here," she whispered. But he couldn't hear her. She sat there for hours, unmoving, watching the boy she once held in her arms now trembling in the cold dust of a cruel world. The room was silent, but not empty, and the line between life and death had begun to crack. The night after the second beating, the house was silent, but tense. Not the kind of peaceful silence that soothed you to sleep. It was the kind that felt like something was watching, waiting. Adaju lay curled up on the storeroom floor, his small arms wrapped tightly around his knees. The pain from the broomstick. Lashes still throbbed along his back. His lips moved in sleep, barely audible. "Mommy, I didn't steal. The moonlight trickled through the wooden slats above him. Dust floated in the air like tiny ghosts. In the main room of the house, Mr. Enamaku had fallen asleep in his chair again, phone still in hand, screen dimmed, mouth slightly open. That's when the dream came. He was standing in the hallway. His hallway. But the house looked different. Empty, cold. The walls cracked, the air stale like a tomb. A strange pressure built in his chest. He turned and saw something in the distance. A light. No, not a light. A woman. She stepped forward slowly. She wasn't walking. She was gliding. Her dress was deep blue, her hair tied back the same way she wore it when she was alive. Her eyes burned, not with anger, but with sorrow so heavy. It pulled the air from the room. It was her, his wife. "Amaka," he whispered. She didn't smile. She didn't greet him. She said only one thing. "Enamaku, if you will not care for our son, then I will. I have been the one feeding him. I have been the one watching. Don't wait for me to come for you next." Then the light behind her surged, and she was gone. He jerked awake with a gasp. His body was slick with sweat, chest heaving. His phone dropped to the floor with a clatter. He looked around wildly. Everything was dark, quiet. He touched his face, his chest, still alive. Just a dream, he told himself, just a nightmare. But he couldn't sleep again. Not that night. Morning came like a slap. Madame Kofo shouted from the kitchen, "Adaju! Come and wash these plates before I pour them on your head!" He didn't answer fast enough. She stormed into the storeroom, dragged him out by the wrist, and shoved him toward the sink. His hands trembled as he scrubbed, his bruises still fresh. His eyes sunken, Zeno and Fola laughed behind him. "You're the house rat," Zeno smirked. "I bet the ghost brings him food again," said Fola. "Stupid ghost boy," he didn't reply. What could he say? That night his stomach rumbled louder than ever. His body was light, like it might drift away with the breeze. He crawled into the corner of the storeroom and looked at the photograph again. He didn't speak this time. He just stared. Then, slowly, as if answering a prayer he hadn't said aloud, it happened again. A third plate. This time, it appeared right, in front of the biscuit tin. Not just rice, moist yam porridge with red oil, onions, crayfish, and a juicy piece of fish on top. His mouth watered, but fear wrestled with hunger. The last beating had nearly broken him. Could he survive another? He hesitated. Then his hand reached out. Just one bite, and then another. He was halfway through the meal when the door flung open. "So you are eating again!" Madame Kofo's shriek was pure rage. Adaju choked, dropping the spoon. "Please, I didn't take it from the kitchen, I swear." "You think I'm a fool?" she screamed, snatching the plate and smashing it against the wall. Food splattered everywhere. "Where is it coming from, you cursed child? From your ghost mother? From the devil?" He backed away, sobbing. I don't know. I didn't steal." This time, she didn't use a broomstick. She used a belt, thick leather, buckled, angry. He cried out with each lash, his voice raw, his body writhing. The noise brought Zeno and Fola running, laughing like it was a game show. Mr. Enamaku heard it too. He didn't move, not even when the boy screamed, not even when he called out, "Daddy," not even when he begged. When it was over, Adaju lay bleeding, barely breathing. Madame Kofo stood over him, panting, her face twisted with fury, sweat on her brow. "Let me catch you eating again. You'll eat from the gutter next time." She left him there. The door slammed shut. Darkness fell. That night, the spirit of his mother did not sit in the corner. She stood. Her eyes glistened with tears. Her hands were clenched. She stepped closer to her son, watched his tiny body curl tighter, and then she turned, out of the room, through the hallway, past her sleeping husband, her ghost feet silent on the tile. She moved through the front door like mist, out into the village night. Inside the storeroom, Adaju's eyelids fluttered. He sat up, but his eyes didn't quite open. Something moved his limbs, not with force, but with gentle pull. He rose, barefoot, drowsy, bleeding. He stepped over the broken plate, past the biscuit, tin, through the door. Outside, the village was asleep. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. A lantern flickered inside a house far away, but the boy kept walking, guided by something he couldn't see but deeply felt. His mother's spirit walked ahead of him, face calm, expression fierce. They passed a broken fence. They crossed the quiet street. They walked beyond the bakery, past the chapel, across a long, sandy road. Each step was silent. Each step was guided. No one saw them. No one called out. The moon lit their way. After what seemed like hours, they reached a small blue clay house at the far edge of the village. Flowers bloomed in rusty tins near the steps. A lantern flickered gently by the window. Adaju stopped. The spirit did too. She turned to him, and for just a moment, he saw her, her outline, her eyes, her smile. He didn't understand, but his soul did. She nodded. He raised a small fist and knocked. Inside the house, Mama Iben stirred. She sat up, confused. Knock, knock, soft, persistent. "Who knocks at this hour?" she murmured, wrapping her scarf and moving to the door. She unlatched it slowly, and then she screamed, "Jesus!" Her knees gave way, standing there, barefoot, bruised, thin as bone, eyes full of tears, was Adaju. "Mama," he whispered. She caught him in her arms before he could fall. Neighbors peeked from windows. A dog barked. Someone turned on a flashlight, but Mama Ibun didn't care. She pressed her cheek against his, weeping openly. "Who brought you here? How did you get here in the night?" Adaju's voice trembled. "My mommy told me to come." Mama Ibun didn't sleep that night. She sat on the wooden floor of her parlor with Adaju in her lap, rocking him gently, whispering prayers through sobs. The boy was barely awake, his body hot with fever, his skin bruised and raw in too many places to count. She hadn't seen him in months, not since the funeral. And now, here he was, half a ghost himself. She bathed his wounds with warm water and herbs, wrapped him in a clean wrapper, and laid him on her own bed. He whimpered in his sleep, murmuring things she couldn't understand. She didn't need to. The scars told her everything. Outside, the roosters crowed to announce the day, but Mama Ibun stayed awake, sitting at the edge of the bed, holding her grandson's small hand. She had questions, so many, but she chose silence. For now, love would speak louder than answers. Across the village, Mr. Enamaku stirred in his sleep. He shifted on the parlor couch, brow furrowed. Something wasn't right. His ears were ringing. Then, the sound vanished. He sat up and blinked at the room. "Kofo!" he called out groggily, but nothing came out. No sound, no voice. His hand shot to his throat. He tried again. Nothing. Panic rose. He stumbled to his feet, staggering down the hall to the bathroom mirror. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Silence. Utter silence. He slapped his ears. Nothing. He screamed, but no one heard it. because even he couldn't. Madame Kofo was already in the kitchen, slamming pots and muttering to herself. "Lazy boy. Didn't even sweep the compound this morning," she grumbled, not realizing the storeroom was empty. She heard heavy footsteps and turned. "What is it now?" she snapped as Anamaku entered, flailing his hands. He pointed to his ears, then to his mouth, then to her. "What nonsense are you doing?" she barked. "Speak like a man." He tried. Nothing. She narrowed her eyes. "Is this some joke?" He dropped to his knees. Tears streamed down his face. His lips moved, but there were no words, only horror, only silence. By noon, the news had spread. The proud Mr. Anamaku, once feared and respected, had lost his voice and hearing overnight. The doctors couldn't explain it. Native healers shook their heads. Pastors prayed and fasted, but nothing worked. Nothing touched it. "Maybe it's punishment," one neighbor whispered. "I heard he left his son in the hands of that wicked woman. His wife's ghost must be angry. Didn't he dream about her days ago?" Madame Kofo slammed her door shut against the gossip. She paced the house like a caged lion, barking at Zeno and Fola, yelling into rooms where no one asked for her. The walls felt too tight, the silence of her husband too loud. She stopped cooking. She stopped cleaning. She stopped pretending. And then one morning, without warning, she packed her bags. "What are you doing, Mommy?" Fola asked, rubbing her eyes. "Are we going somewhere?" Zeno added, tugging her wrapper. She didn't answer. She shoved clothes into a Ghana must-go bag, zipped it hard, and stood tall. "You're leaving?" Fola's voice cracked. Madame Kofo turned, eyes hard. "I didn't come to this house to raise children I didn't pray for. I'm not your father's nurse. Let him take care of you." And just like that, she walked out, down the steps, out the gate. She never looked back. Mr. Anamaku watched her go from the parlor window. He opened his mouth to shout, but only air came. He dropped into the chair and wept. His tears were soundless. Even his grief was mute. Back in her clay house, Mama Ibun was doing something very different. She was singing. Adaju sat at the kitchen table, freshly bathed, dressed in clean clothes, watching his grandmother stir ogi in a pot. The scent of warm papanakara filled the house. Birds chirped outside the window. "Today you will eat well, my son," she said, smiling gently. He nodded. His lips trembled. "Are you still hurting?" she asked, walking over. He shook his head. "Are you scared?" He didn't answer. His eyes were still cloudy, but she understood. "Come," she said, opening her arms. He ran into them, and for the first time in what felt like centuries, he felt safe. The days passed like petals drifting on water. Every morning, Adaju helped sweep the compound. He ate meals at the table. He listened to his grandmother's stories about his mother, how strong she was, how she used to dance in the rain, how she would sing to the moon. "You look like her, you know," Mama Ibun said one night as they sat on the porch. "You have her eyes, her quiet strength." He smiled for the first time, a real smile, the kind that reached his cheeks. He started, going to school again. His uniform was second-hand, but clean. He shared snacks with his cousins, laughed with the other children. At night, he slept in a real bed, not on the floor, and dreamed of mango trees and bright skies. The nightmares faded. He still kept the biscuit tin, still talked to the portrait sometimes. But now it was different. Now, the voice inside him didn't beg. It said thank you. One quiet evening, Mr. Anamaku arrived at Mama Ibun's gate. His clothes were wrinkled, his eyes sunken. He looked older than ever. Zeno and Fola stood beside him, wide-eyed. He knocked once. Mama Ibun opened the door, but did not step aside. She looked at him, then at the children, then back at him. "You lost your voice," she said. Because you refused to speak for your son." He said nothing. "You lost your hearing," she continued, "because you refused to hear his pain." He fell to his knees. Tears streamed down. He gestured wildly, pointing to his heart, then to the house, then to the children, but she shook her head. "You left him with a devil and called it peace," he wept. "Now you want to see him? After everything?" She stepped back and closed the gate slowly. "No," she said, and walked away. Behind the gate, Adaju peeked from the window. He saw his father on his knees. He saw his step-siblings standing in confusion. And beside him, in the reflection of the glass, he saw her, his mother, standing, smiling, fading gently into the shadows. It had been nearly a year since Adaju arrived at his grandmother's home, barefoot and broken. Now, the boy who once whispered to a photo in a biscuit tin stood at the center of a schoolyard, surrounded by classmates singing him happy birthday, his 8th birthday. He wore a clean blue shirt, 2 buttons missing but carefully stitched. A paper crown sat slightly crooked on his head. His hands held a small plastic fork, and on his lap rested a plate of steaming jollof rice with a single fried drumstick on top. He smiled. It was the kind of smile that made people want to protect him, not pity him. The kind that said, "I am still here." From the corner of the yard, Mama Eben watched, wiping tears with the hem of her wrapper. She had baked the cake herself, dry and lopsided but perfect. Later, they would go home, light a candle, and she would tell him stories about his mother's birthdays, how she once danced in circles just because it was raining. Adaju was safe, now fed, seen, loved, but not everyone was whole. On the other side of the village, Mr. Enamaku woke with aching knees and a heart too heavy for words, though he hadn't spoken a single word in nearly 12 months. He moved through his house like a ghost. Zeno and Fola no longer laughed. Their mother hadn't returned. They rarely went to school. The neighbors whispered. No one knocked on their door anymore. They lived with silence and guilt and the slow, gnawing absence of the boy they once mocked. Every year on the same day, Adaju's birthday, Mr. Enamaku prepared a ritual of his own. He would rise early, wash his face, cook a plate of white rice, seasoned simply, no meat, wrap it carefully, and walk alone. Down the winding road toward the edge of the village, where the soil grew softer and the trees bent low as if in prayer. There, behind a rusted iron gate and a patch of wild lilies, stood her grave. His wife. He would kneel, unwrap the food, place it gently at the foot of the stone, and close his eyes. He could no longer speak, but every year, his mouth shaped the same silent words. "Thank you, my wife, I remember." Then he cried. Not loudly, not messily, the kind of crying that breaks sound and flows directly from the soul. No one saw him. No one interrupted. Only the wind answered. That day, as he stood up and turned to leave, he felt something, a shiver, not from fear, but from memory. He looked back at the grave, and for just a second he thought, no. He knew, he saw her, standing there, same blue dress, same peaceful face, same eyes that once looked at him with love and now with sorrow. She didn't move. She didn't smile. She just watched. Then she turned, slowly, and faded into the trees like mist returning to the sky. He dropped to his knees again, but this time, not in begging, in surrender. That night, far away in the warm glow of Mama Ibun's home, Adaju sat with his cousins playing Ludo on the floor. The radio played old high life. Music! The smell of stew lingered in the air. He laughed as one of his cousins cheated. Then he stood and walked to the wall where his mother's photo now hung, framed properly this time, glass polished. He looked at it for a long moment, then whispered, "I'm okay now, Mommy. You don't have to worry anymore." He touched the frame. The glass felt cool, but something behind it felt warm. Outside, the wind picked up. It passed through the mango trees like a sigh of relief. And under the stars, at the edge of that little compound, the spirit of his mother stood one last time. She saw her son laugh. She saw him fed, loved, safe. She closed her eyes, and with a final smile, she stepped into the light and was gone, forever, but not forgotten, because some loves never end and some mothers never stop protecting, even from the other side. If you watched until the end, comment the word unbreakable, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with family and friends.